Coach Sewell, welcome back for another weekend preview. What a weekend it was for your group at the Hilltopper Spring Fling just over the weekend. Won every game, really dominating fashion throughout the weekend. Just could you have scripted really a better weekend for your group in terms of what you were able to accomplish and in terms of the tasks that you wanted them to set out and go do?
Yeah, I think we need to, we talked about that throughout the weekend. We need to win in a couple different ways. And, of course, we won the first day pretty big and then won that third game pretty big. And then we talked about the WKU game. They're a really good club, and they're going to probably finish 1-2 in Conference USA, I think. And that was the kind of win where we had two choices. We could get frustrated or we could get very focused about it. And I thought we focused up pretty quickly in about the fifth inning, sixth inning, and decided, you know what, we'll just hang in there until we can pop one. So.
Well, Anna Carter for sure had herself a weekend to remember, named the Valley Player of the Week just earlier this week. What have you been impressed by what she's done so far, and especially this weekend, what she was able to do?
Well, the funny part is she didn't even know she did it. It's usually on those weekends where you don't know that you're hot, And it's very, we were laughing in the bullpen. She was catching a bullpen yesterday, and she said, I had no idea. I said, but that's the weekend when you're feeling it normally.
Yeah.
You're not focused on results. You're just trying to win for your team. And I thought we could have swept the Valley Awards. I mean, we had Maddie Groff 2-0. Maddie Everly had a great weekend. Anna has an incredible weekend. And we have a freshman with Amanda Knudsen who pops two out in the same game and then comes through big time in the WKU game. So we were good, I thought, over in all of the areas. I thought defense came up big. Obviously, the pitching's been there, but the hitting really showed out. But that's just a product. We were talking before about just playing softball. You know, when you know you're going to play and you play, you get more consistent. So.
I know we'll get to this weekend. Of course, I know weather will always play a factor in terms of maybe how the tournament may get reshifted. But even out of the uncontrollables, just the important factor that you felt like you got production, as you kind of said, from everybody,
Yeah.
and then you actually got every game in. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's close to the first weekend where even though you still had a little bit of shifting around with your schedule,
Right.
still getting that many games in, that's what you're just more probably concerned about
Yeah,
more than anything else.
I think every day we put on the uniform, pretty much know we were going to play. And the field was a little sloppy, but it hasn't bothered us. And I think that's where this team's really going to shine is they're not going to focus on what, like you talked about, what the weather and the change and all that. They can get focused up pretty quickly and play. So I was super impressed with all the ways we played the game this weekend.
When you look at Maddie and what she's continuing to do, I mean, especially against, as you said, Western Kentucky's a really good team, and to be able to do exactly what she did, I think was outstanding. Where is she as a young freshman, regardless of the accolades that come her way? We talked about maybe, got roughed up a little bit against Purdue towards the end of the game, but like last weekend or 2 weekends ago now. But where is she continuing to impress you in terms of just being really not even, I know she is a freshman, but just continuing to improve as a young pitcher at this level?
I think what people don't realize is she can make her own adjustments. So she was in the bullpen yesterday. She didn't like something. We didn't really have a long conversation about it, but she was in the bullpen with her sister adjusting that pitch. And those are junior, senior type adjustments. Those normally freshmen are just sort of happy to be there, happy to throw their game, get their start, get their innings. She's adjusting like a veteran. She's older in the pitching mind aspect of things. So, and the key to her is really Maddie Everly, and I thought that's where they could tandem each other this weekend. Maddie has figured some things out that really impressed us as well. So what you saw was sort of this 1-2 punch, which is what we are expecting. And then Hannah Hockerman gets some innings. Kiana will get more innings, but really you saw that back and forth of the 1 and the 1A. You shouldn't really be able to distinguish them in terms of starts. And I thought either one of them could have thrown any of those games. So,
what area do you believe, when you talk about Maddie Eberly, with her weekend, and you're saying, man, I'm starting to see some things that she's really doing well, like what were the areas that you felt like, this is great, Maddie, like this is something you got to continue to build on here as we go throughout the year?
Yeah, I think most people don't realize she's pitching healthy for the first time ever in her career. And that can be some pressure when you're expected to do well because you are healthy. And I thought she really just took the lid off. It's like opening a can of Coke and letting the pressure out. She just pitched this weekend with really no expectations and let it come to her. And velocity-wise, she was up. She was in the 65, 66, 67 range, which is her range, and she had multiple pitches. So she's made some changes a little bit to her motion, which I think kept her on time. And she was able, for the first time, to throw her entire arsenal. And anytime you feel like you have every pitch, you're going to feel deadlier in the moment. And that's where I think her and Mattia, when they don't need all their pitches right now, they will get them eventually. But when they do, it's kind of over for hitters.
One of the areas that you touched up on there at the beginning that maybe fans don't quite understand. Explain and go a little bit further into when you were talking about Maddie of why there can be a lot of pressure now of when people go, oh, you're healthy.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden how that pressure can build for someone like her. Like, where do you see your role in that to try to alleviate some of that pressure?
Well, I mean, she pitched at the Utah Regional basically with 2 injuries, and they were just compounding at that point. So you can always go home and fall back on, well, she's not an excuse maker at all. She's a really tough individual on and off the field. But when you maybe miss a pitch or somebody gets to you, you can say, well, I'm not 100% healthy. And I'm a grinder, right? I'm just going to work through this. Then when you're free to sort of use all your pitches, or you're supposedly supposed to be having everything in your arsenal, and you don't, and you're healthy, you start to really build it on yourself. And I think we talked through, like, let's get into the season, right? We don't have to arrive on March 3rd. Let's arrive in May with all of our pitches. Let's start here with some basic stuff and be on time with those pitches, and then we'll build out to the other pitches. Now, the hardest part is we played the toughest part of the schedule sometimes in February, and you feel like you do have to be ready to go as a pitcher. But I think as she's sort of backed off herself, she's let things kind of come to her. So, and you're moving better, you feel better, you recover better, and I think she pops up the next day like, wow, I'm not sore. The training room routine is different. You're not spending hours in a cold tub trying to just recover to throw another. I mean, what people don't realize is she ended her career throwing almost 600 pitches in 2 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, that's almost inhumane, but she wanted to do it. And now she's got help, and she feels good. So I think sometimes people think, well, I feel good, I should be doing better than I am. But she's doing exactly what she needs to do.
It's why you're in the position you are, Coach, because they are not easy positions in terms of how to navigate them. And what I'm alluding to is where you were talking about, the pressure of wanting to be ready now, but also trying to tell your team, look, we need you to be clicking come May. And but the other side of that is when you're kind of at our level, you understand where the opportunities are to help set yourself up for a potential really good May is what you do in late February, early March with your schedule. What have you found are the best ways? And we've kind of talked about this at times in different ways through our conversations so far. But what do you see as the best approach of balancing both, of making sure you're not putting the pressure of the world on one weekend on your team, but also making sure they know the importance of a weekend early that can hopefully help them come May?
Yeah, I think we've talked about that even amongst Valley schools, because we have been in the at-large conversation every year, maybe at least 2 to 3 teams. I think there's 2 ways to do it. You sort of hide it from your team, and you try to let your team just play it out, and you try not to put too much pressure on them, or you have a conversation about it, and you're open and you have a language for it, and you say, hey, this is how the process works. Here we are. This is what you signed up for. We've been doing it for a very long time in the program, and I think we have been open with the conversation and instead of hiding the RPI idea from kids. I think they're smart, and they're going to go on the internet and they're going to find it anyway. So, and you have fans and parents and social media always chattering about it. So I think we just stay open about it, and we have a language for it instead of letting the pressure build and letting kids guess about what they're in for. And I think we've talked about it. We usually don't talk about it in the weekend, but we'll talk about it during the week in practice. Like, hey, that was a great win. That's going to show up well for us. Maybe this is a loss, like, hey, we need to take care of this weekend. But the biggest thing is just taking care of, like, if you can stay pretty much one game at a time, again, the most cliche thing you can say to your team.
Yeah.
But if you can really, like the WKU game, win in a couple different ways, you're probably going to be ready in May.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's always going to be the goal. And now you're going to be at home this weekend for the Coach B Classic. I mean, again, I don't really want to talk about the uncontrollables in terms of the things that we all love to sometimes maybe squarely focus on as the things we can't control and put our hand into. But from a importance of being able to host this tournament at home, to have a tournament at home, because I know these are fans and this is an area that's really anxious to come out and see you play.
Yeah, and I'll apologize because we probably jinxed the weather this weekend. We do this every year, but yeah, I think it's important for our fan base to get out, and I think they're anxious to see the pitching staff. I think they're anxious to see the young players. They always come out on that Coach B Classic weekend. It's usually sort of a pre-weekend. We always have to, during the spring break week, because of our travel partner with Missouri State, we're kind of forced to open on spring break. We'll be the earliest into the conference games. So it's sort of like a great 4 games for us to keep that momentum that we've built in February and then sort of roll into Springfield playing well, hopefully, and then come home again. And typically March, April for us is a home sort of leans heavy on the home games. So it's nice to have that momentum coming out of Coach B Classic, to feel the fan base, let them see, you know, what that chatter is about in February.
Is it hard to believe as a coach that, not that I want to jump ahead and we'll get to your opponents this weekend in a moment, but taking a little bit of a detour, that this time next week, Coach, you're going to be in conference play. I mean, whether you're ready for it or not, but I mean, that's,
comes fast.
It comes so fast.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was watching, you know, the ACC has started this past weekend. The Big Ten played. The OVC has played. With these bigger, thicker conferences, deeper conferences, you have to get those weekends in. And that's with us even rotating out to opponents. So, yeah, it's go time. I mean, you're really building that momentum in February into that first conference series. And, again, our hope is that we've gone this sort of very regimented one game at a time, and we're not looking to, you know, we need to take care of UWGB and Loyola. And then we'll talk about the weekend trip, you know, or the week trip on Sunday, and we'll take those 2 at a time. And then nobody has even mentioned the Drake series, which is good. That means our team is paying attention to what's most important.
Look at Loyola, of course, used to be in the league. It's one of those teams that rotated off, and then you got Green Bay this weekend coming in. Why were those 2 programs that you felt were important to be a part of this tournament, and where you feel they can really be some great competition this weekend here?
Yeah, I think UWGB, new coaching staff, really doing a good job. Recruits in this area quite a bit, you know, all up and down Illinois. That's important. Loyola just always is a solid club. They've gotten really good on the mound, and obviously we recruit a little bit against each other, a little bit different situation campus-wise, but very well coached, and they probably remember, just like we do, the years of going back and forth in the conference. So they'll come to play. They're playing well. They've also played a very tough schedule, so I think their record right now doesn't show just how good they are. But we'll remember probably some of their pitching. Probably our kids, our older kids, vets may remember some of those guys. But it's one of those things where take care of each game and try to roll into next week.
No, this weekend it won't be televised, but we will have an audio stream for it. And this year, that's something that we're adding to our coverage. Is Mike Trude, Eli Hoover will help out this weekend too in terms of covering those games. Just as from the program standpoint, Coach Sewell, how important is that to have that exposure? And I know this week, later this year, when you go to Bradley, that will also be a series that Mike will go on the road and do. I mean, it's really important, I feel like, for your program, but for any program, you know, in the Valley to have that type of exposure, especially when you go on the road in the league and some games where, look, all of our league institutions try to get every game on television, and that can't always happen, but the next best thing is to still be able to send somebody to go and do the game.
Well, and I think Mike has known our program for a long time, and Eli as well. So when they hear Mike, they're like, oh, you know, we're listening to something that knows the history of the program, sort of knows the hype that's surrounding us, and of course it gets my mom off my rear end about the game not being on TV. So Marcia's happy, but I think Mike is sort of that recognizable. Oh, we're going to get a really good broadcast here. We're going to get some insights that we can understand about what's going on. Mike paints an incredible picture when he's broadcasting with us. So, but I think he knows us. He's been to practice. He understands sort of the nuances of what we're trying to do, especially traveling with us through the postseason last year. I think anytime someone hears his voice, they know they're getting some better color, some better, play-by-play in that sense. So it's like, oh, Mike's on, we got to turn on. So I like that sort of, fans are able to just remember that voice. So
Absolutely.
And it gives us sort of this more regional, national situation. So.
Well, I'd run through the schedule of what it will be this weekend, but I know odds are it will probably change. Yeah. So what we will say is to the fans, just stay locked in to SIUSalukis.com, and everything will get updated as we go through.
We will play softball. So.
we will play softball this weekend. When and exactly what time, we'll update you all.
Right.
Coach Sewell, it was really awesome to follow your team this past weekend. Let's get it home and have a really good weekend this weekend.
That sounds like a great idea. Thanks, Luke.